For the quarter gone by, things weren't exactly great. But can Cipla go back to the 20% plus guidance, which in a sense has been the basic intent of the company? And what about the COVID business? Because the numbers what we right now have are till March. The second wave only came after March, and Cipla does have a significant presence in the entire COVID portfolio. Umang, fantastic to have you on ET now. Thank you for joining us. Let's talk about the COVID situation. There is a lot of panic, or there was a lot of panic in April and May. Now things are looking better. Are things looking up on the supply front? Just about everyone, in a sense, was trying to arrange some life-saving medicines on the COVID front. Are things getting better?
Yes, I would say that my belief is that a lot of the supply constraints that were there for the main COVID drugs are now abating. I think remdesivir, my belief is that with the step up in capacities across the manufacturing chain, I think that there will be enough stock in the market. I think whether it's dexamethasone or it's, for that matter, enoxaparin, I think a lot of supply is currently available. So too, I would think for favipiravir. So for the mainstay drugs, I think a lot of this has been resolved. As the disease continues to shift, right now we are seeing black fungus, for example, or mucormycosis cases on the rise. I think it would probably require a little bit of time for people to step up for those conditions, because the disease sequelae keeps shifting. It was different in wave 1, it's different in wave 2, and within wave 2 now, we're seeing the second part of wave 2 being different sequelae. So some of those are being stepped up, but I would like to believe that predominantly for most of the drugs that are manufactured in the country, I think a large portion of the scaling up has been done.
Umang, I've always admired Cipla and the whole ethos what Cipla stands for, which is care and people first. Are you likely to adopt that policy, given that the country is battling the COVID crisis? Are you likely to shift the focus of your manufacturing activity and prioritize COVID-related drugs more?
Well, not mainly dominate. I think this is unfortunately a disease of the waves. So we have said this earlier, that in the quarters before quarter 4, we were about 5% of our contribution came from COVID drugs. In the most recent quarter, which is quarter 4, we had about 3% of overall company sales coming through COVID drugs. So I think it is a part of our portfolio, but our core portfolio is strong, and momentum from that portfolio is also very high. But if the society requires us to step in to create access for more drugs that are required for COVID, Cipla will always be there at the forefront.
Preparing for the third wave, are you keeping stock ready? Are you anticipating a third wave? What is the preparedness at your end?
Look, I'm unfortunately a person in the supply chain for these medicines. I don't have, neither the wisdom nor the ability to look at it. But I would comment more like a common man, as I've seen, parents of friends, my own parents go through this. So maybe a couple of points that I could make. The first is, I think there has to be a stockpile, because you can't, if there's ever a big outbreak like the one we've gone through in India, and I hope our wave 3 is not as ascendant as we've seen this wave to be, and as quickly ascendant as we've seen this wave to be. So I would expect some kind of a stockpile that exists either within various manufacturers or in a tie-up with the government to be able to respond to an immediate crisis while allowing the manufacturing industry time to scale up. So I would create some strategic stockpile of drugs, if that's possible at all. The second would obviously be vaccination and its prevention. And the third would really be the ability to localize a large part of the chain in India. For example, today, we see that, paracetamol or azithromycin, a large chunk of that chain still comes from outside of the country. Is it possible to begin to localize some of that chain here, which not only has an impact on how quickly we scale, but also how affordably we are able to do it? So I would have those 3 suggestions. I think there are various states that have taken the lead in ensuring, the supply of oxygen and beds in hospitals. I think some kind of a central database, some kind of a website where people, there's adequate oxygen. And again, this is part of the strategic pile-up that we could create for a wave like this. But also the fact that there's enough of a dashboard. I'm told Kerala had some kind of a dashboard available for people on where oxygen was in supply, where hospital beds were available, rather than perhaps people trying to find out by visiting these hospitals. So I think those would be 3 or 4 things that maybe I would put as my learnings from this wave and crisis.
Mr. Vohra, you've recently done a tie-up with Roche for the antibody cocktail in order to treat COVID-19. Can you share a little bit more about what the details are of this?
Well, the antibody cocktail is basically a combination of 2 drugs, 2 monoclonal antibodies, which is used when a patient has mild to moderate COVID. And I think what happens with that is that it's the equivalent, let me put it very simplistically. If you have not had a vaccine, and at that time you're infected with this, the antibody, the 2 antibodies quickly relieve your body of symptoms. So it's like if you're not had a vaccine, this is the closest you could get to having a vaccine if you do get infected, right? So I think that's the difference between in how the antibody cocktail works. I think the product will probably be available towards the later half of May in the country, and actually we believe that I think this could help prevent huge complications for people who've not had vaccines, even if they take the drug as soon as they're diagnosed with it.
Talk to us about the availability of raw material. Do you think that sourcing raw material is an issue for mass production of COVID drugs?
Well, we have the raw material, but there is one raw material which is used in remdesivir, which is globally short, right? And I think India buys a large chunk of that raw material. And I think there has to be some effort in trying to increase the raw material of that drug, of that particular excipient as well. So I think by and large, the remdesivir chain has been kind of, has been optimized to a large chunk. I don't believe remdesivir will be a constraint, frankly, going forward. I think a lot of manufacturers and supply chain have significantly stepped up.
I mean, there's been so much noise around the shortage of the vaccine. How do you think this issue can be approached? If you could talk us through some of the challenges there.
I would think so. I think one of the things that will probably happen after the wave is that there will be a very significant need and momentum to vaccinate as many people as we can. I think the traditional vaccines, which are the adeno vector-based vaccines, which we have in India, already there are so many tie-ups to increase capacity. And I think they will only increase. I think the disease is unfortunately shifting. So even, even if we get vaccinated, there will be a need as more variants multiply for us to keep getting vaccinated to prevent us from sickness as the variants multiply over time. And therefore, I think that there will be booster shots needed across all vaccines that are there. And as data plays out, we'll know exactly what kind of immunity we have. But yes, on the prime vaccine, which is the 2-shot vaccine or the 3-shot vaccines as most people have them, I think there will be a very strong drive to inoculate a lot of people in India in the next 6 months.
Okay, in global trends now, China is the number one, of course. China one is the strategy. And in pharma talks as well about the India +1 strategy. What impact can that have on growth when we see that strategic shift to talking about India +1 versus China one?
No, I think India will continue to play its role in the pharmaceutical industry. And I think, it's a big shout out to all our competitors, all our peer companies in the pharma universe. I think what each one of us has been able to do in COVID in terms of just scaling up is remarkable. So as much as we speak about Cipla, I think every one of the companies in India on the pharma side has done a remarkable job in trying to make sure that we're self-reliant and we're making a large amount of drugs within the country. I think even on vaccines that will happen. We will see more. There are more tie-ups that are happening every day in terms of fill finish capacity. India is already a powerhouse when it comes to adeno-based vaccines, and I'm hoping over a period of time that India also begins to come out with different technology vaccines as well. So we will continue to retain this position. It's our legacy, and it's also something that we promise to deliver to several parts of the world, like Africa. So I think India will continue to be the thing. I'm not sure. I think India will stay as the powerhouse of generic drugs and vaccines over the world.
About the numbers and things for the quarter gone by, your respiratory business, next 2 to 3 years, which is FY22 and FY23, there is a strong launch pipeline is what we understand. Do you think all the hard work has happened and now it's time to pluck the fruits?
Yes, I think our pipeline gets monetized, and as we become bigger, we'll have to continue to do the hard work on bringing more products into the pipeline, which is what we're trying to do. But yes, a relentless focus on execution, Pankaj, over what we have in our pipeline will enable us to launch a respiratory franchise and grow bigger from here.
Contributor to this business, will it be Albuterol? Will it be complex generics? What will drive the respiratory business?
Yes, I would like to believe that. And not only in the US, it will be a very strong part of our portfolio in India. It will be a very strong part of our portfolio in South Africa and all our emerging markets. So the leadership of the lung, the ability to bring more therapies that are based on cure from their path of the lung is something that Cipla will invest significantly in. It's also an area that Cipla has a lot of experience in dealing with. But having said that, we are also humbled by the opportunity and the challenges that the delivery of medicine to the lung will entails, right? So yes, the lung will be a very significant portion of how our company's future will unlock.
Umang, last time, when we saw the lockdown hitting businesses, we did see a lot of savings as well. And with lockdowns continuing, how do you see things shaping up this time when it comes to, business outlook and the impact? Do you also see margins increasing this time around?
Yes. So I think some of these will continue will continue the way they have in the previous year. And I think the reason for this is, of course, A, that, the lockdowns are there, but B, also because a lot of us have reimagined how we're going to work, right? We've got more digital into our operations. Today, we are onboarding people virtually, right, who join the organization. We're connecting with doctors, with medical facilities virtually. So a lot of the reimagination of the workplace has actually happened. For example, our offices, our manufacturing facilities are open, right? But some of our offices, whether they're field offices or our main corporate office, still continues to be closed, and we are operating virtually. And I think this has changed the way we think of work. It's changed the way that we operate, and perhaps may have made our operations a lot more productive.
Okay, and how do you think margins will change as we see increased digital adoption? What do you see as the major trend? A lot of the benefits, do you feel, will stay back in the coming years?
I can't say it will be only with digital, but my hope is that we change the way we work. And I think, I think it just makes it more productive for everyone. Our general sense is that, when you have crises such as these, or when you have shocks such as these, 30-40% of it stays, and the balance reverts back to the mean. And we saw this even when we had demonetization. The e-payments went up, then came down a bit, but stayed at a level which was significantly higher than what it was pre-demonetization, right? The e-payment and the transactions on the net. I think a similar thing will happen in all of our workings here, that we will probably settle from pre-pandemic to post-pandemic. We'll get a very different level of digital adoption. And I think though you could see a little bit of it going back, I think we expect that, 20, 30, 40% of it may stay digital. And I hope it does that because it allows more access in the market and significantly allows more productivity of time.
Now, for the quarter gone by, Umang, the margins weren't great, but going forward, based on what I've read in terms of the conference call notes, you think margins will pick up? What will take margins back above 20% for Cipla?
So we want to maintain and grow our current state of profitability, which is what you mentioned on the call. At the same time, we're also wanting to grow significantly from where we are today. So we haven't guided to a certain percentage or number because, and it's not out of not knowing where we could end up, but it's just that there are phenomenally different, there are different tweaks to how this market will play out. It's got the manifestations of COVID, it's got the manifestations of core portfolio, it's got a geopolitical outlook. And so therefore, we are just saying we will continue and maintain our profitability. And the second is we will show growth from here and, hoping to show stronger growth from here.
Finally, the US portfolio, about $150 million. How do you see it getting scaled up now? For low presence to a decent presence, what will it take for Cipla to increase the US portfolio to significant presence?
So the US business responds most to launches. We were at about 115 to 120 million range in the last year. We've now moved up to the 140 odd million range on the back of our launch calendar. And as our launches start coming into the US, I think even this trajectory from where we are will start moving up. We see some launches coming in this year, but also the next year is a very strong launch year for our US business. So I think over a period of time, as launches unlock, we will begin to see this trajectory move up in the US. And we are confident of our execution. And also the teams are putting enough effort into it.